Hello, everybody. Looks like people are coming in.
Yep, all good. While people are joining, I will apologise in advance for any coughing. I've been really ill with COVID this week, so just wanted to put it out there. Marcus, you're ready to riff if I start coughing. So
Yes.
thanks for the patience if I'm not, having to take little breaks. I've got a cup of tea to help me. It's going to be okay. Cool. What's your Should we get started?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very, very much for joining us today. We are talking about the 5 key considerations when building your product-led toolkit. As Marcus and I were putting this together, we actually realised there's 6. So we did the slides and then there was 6. So consider that a bonus. But it should be a really fun session. I'm joined by my lovely colleague, Marcus. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Hannah. I'm Marcus. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at Pendo. Work really closely with Hannah at Pendo. And we're a product analytics company, and we spend a lot of time, we build for product teams and product managers. We spend a lot of time thinking about product-led companies and product-led growth. So this is always a fun talk for us to kind of dig into this topic. That's me, yeah.
I love it. So yeah, as Marcus said, we work closely together on the product marketing team at Pendo. I've been a founder a few times over. I've always worked in software for a very long time now. Like half my life I worked out, Marcus, the other day.
Oh,
half
wow.
of it. Half.
Wow. You should get an award or something. That is...
Where's my medal? So kind of been lucky enough to see this like evolution from like the days where we were literally, like hand coding websites to now this whole product-led movement. And I've always been involved in the product side, which has meant I've seen how product-led has changed the entire role of the product manager as well. So it's a really cool topic, and we're going to get stuck in. So what we're going to cover is like, what is product led? Like when I first heard that phrase, I was like, I don't know what that is. Is this just like, in software we have those like buzzwords and those things that come and go. I was like, what is this thing? So we're going to explain to you what product led is, and it does actually matter. We're going to explain to you why. We're going to look at what product led organizations actually do differently. What are these organizations doing that makes them succeed in a different way to companies that aren't product led? And then we're going to give you a bit of advice on where to start the journey as well. As Marcus said, we've been very close to this kind of whole change over the last few years. So we've got got the inside scoop, haven't we, Marcus?
I hope so. We've learned, I feel like we've learned a lot and made a lot of mistakes along the way. So hopefully it's stuff that people can benefit from and can jump people forward a little bit. And like, also just from our customers. I mean, I think that's where we pick up a lot of this stuff, is like, we observe what's happening out there in the world and we're trying to consolidate some of it for people. So, but yeah. And it's a small group. So if you guys have questions, like put them in the chat, or just unmute and ask them too. If you interrupt me or Hannah, I don't think either of us will mind. We would love to hear from you and hear what you think. If you agree or disagree or want to talk about something specific as we're going through it all, like let's do it. Yeah,
good point, Marcus. That'd be great. So Marcus, like this was my big question when I first heard this word. Like, what is being product led? What is it?
Yeah, I think this is being product led. I think is definitely a trend, and I think a lot of the times people get introduced to it through the idea, or they hear about like product led growth or like PLG. And I think product-led growth is sort of like one component, one strategy of a product-led organization. There's a lot of focus on it because growth is really important. But I think you're seeing some of that start to shift now, and seeing other ways that product-led organizations use their product to help achieve their goals, whether that's like using the product to do better support, or product-led sales, or even like using your product to help achieve the goals of like recruiting or finance. There's lots of different ways you can use your product to build a better business. And so when I think about like what is being product led, I think it's like a new way of building a company. And it's really putting the customer first and building a better customer experience. You just do it through the product, I think. I always think of like Zoom as a really good example here. Like, we're on Zoom right now. In the last few years, Zoom has really blown up. Anyone can use Zoom for free. There's this like built-in viral loop of Zoom. And they just do a really good job of like building great software and then kind of getting out of your way. Like, you don't spend a lot of time like thinking about how you use Zoom. You just log in and you use it, and it's great. And I think they're a really product-led company. Product-led companies are, we're going to get into like, what do they do differently and how do they work? But like the things that are very clear about product-led companies is that they're very successful. If you look at like product-led companies in the public market or private market, they're usually valued much more than non-product-led companies. They're also extremely efficient. Like, they operate really lean. You can get they get more out of their people than non-product-led companies. And their customers enjoy them more. Product-led companies they have higher NPS than non-product-led companies. So we'll get into all the reasons why, but I mean, I think, being product-led is a shift in how you run your business. It's not necessarily about, the product team being the lead dog in the company either. So I think that's another misconception. Every product-led company I've worked at or worked with, they always have a really strong product team, but it's not like PMs are just running show or anything like that, but they are a really, really critical component of like how it works. So yeah, I think you're going to talk a little bit about like all the different teams, Hannah. So I'll pass it over to you.
Ta-da! So as you were describing so nicely, Marcus, like this is just a really neat way to like visualize, like with circles, apparently, like the structure of a product-led company. The product is like the middle of all the different departments, and each team and each department is thinking about ways that they can use the product to be efficient and to give customers a really great experience. And it's very broad, isn't it, Marcus? We're going to get quite tactical in a bit, because I think the one thing I found when I started reading about product-led is it can be quite overwhelming. It can mean lots of things to lots of people, and that's okay. It is very broad, but it is important to think about, where are the places that you can have impact with having the product at the center of, a function, a department or something straight away. And you gave some really nice examples, right? You talked about like free products. There's, getting product qualified leads because people are using your product for free. Even little things like putting your credit card in and being able to upsell without human interaction is one of those product-led growth motions. So there's lots and lots of different things. And this really has changed. You alluded at the end there, it really has changed the function of the product managers to a large degree. Like, I've always worked in product management, and before the focus was very much on delivering for the business and the customer. And now I think the modern product manager needs to think a bit broader and think about what the product can help deliver to support all of the different departments in an organization as well. So there's a lot to it, but yeah, it'll become clearer, I promise everyone, as we kind of get into the more tactical side.
Yeah, that is a big shift though. And I think a great one if you're a PM to think about. It's like, yeah, how can I use, you still need to understand customer pain and build solutions for them and help them. But like also, yeah, how can you use the product to increase retention or solve for teams that are a little bit outside of like your typical thing, like great product teams can do that and do that well now. All right, so I'll give you a little bit about like a quick spiel about like why this matters so much right now. I was talking about how product-led companies are more efficient. And I think efficiency is something that's just extremely top of mind for everybody right now. And at Pendo, we've just like our thesis and our theory, and like I think everybody who really believes in product-led organizations is that doing more with your product is the key to efficiency. So like if you really want to gain efficiencies, reduce costs, cut waste, like there's so much low-hanging fruit usually at most companies where you can use your product to sort of step in and do that. So if you go to the next slide, Hannah, this is important right now because, we are in this massive time of substantial change, right? Like in the last 3 years, there's been so much change in our world and in business, like it's hard to describe. So this is my poor attempt at putting like all of the change into one slide, or at least the current change into one slide. But for businesses right now, there's all these macroeconomic headwinds. There's inflation is extremely high. We're seeing in the States, there's negative GDPR growth for 2 consecutive quarters, indication of a recession. There's massive global change and uncertainty. And that is a poor summary of everything that's been happening in the world. But what I think is a pretty good summary of what businesses are trying to do to adapt is that they're just doing everything they can to get more efficient, especially in software, so they, not have to take on funding if they don't have to because valuations are poor. But being as efficient as possible. And then all of us are sort of under more pressure right now to deliver, to continue to hit aggressive goals, but to do it with less resources. You don't have that headcount you thought you were going to have. You're not getting that extra designer. You're not going to have your UX researcher that you thought you might get. If you're like in the marketing team, your budget, budget's cut a little bit. Like all of these things are making it harder to achieve our goals, but our goals aren't changing, right? Like we still have to hit these aggressive goals. So if you go to the next page. One thing that's interesting too, at the same time, all this is happening, software spend is still growing fast. Like it's still the biggest line item in the IT budget. And this is just because software multiplies the power of people, right? So if you go to the next slide, there's all these macroeconomic headwinds, but we see companies fighting back by going product led. So you have to do more with less, trying to become more efficient. And the companies that can lean on their product to help them do that, I think are the ones that are really figuring out like, how are they going to meet aggressive goals with less resources? They're reducing costs, they're increasing retention, they're growing more efficiently, all doing it like on the back of their product. And if you go to the next slide. And these are probably the 4 big ways, really the 3 big ways in a bonus way, lots of bonus points in this presentation. The 3 big ways are really like, there's less cost for product-led companies. So, we see our customers, especially, but also, just product-led companies all over, they have less waste and less costs. So, they don't, instead of having a good example of this is that instead of having lots and lots of support tickets that are answered by an army of human beings, they lean on the product to solve some of those issues either before they happen or like reactively with like in-app support or something like this, a solution like this, where you're using the product to replace potentially, not to replace the humans, right? But like make the human, like allow the humans to do a higher order level thing in like tens of people, hundreds of people potentially, depending on the size of your company. Product-led companies, they grow much more efficiently too. So we see this product-led growth motion or a freemium growth motion. If you have a sales team who is spending a lot of time like prospecting and cold calling, doing all of these things, that is really a time suck. Your product, a free product with a PLG motion, can get warm leads to sales without all of that. And it's this much more efficient motion, kind of can be cost intensive at the beginning. But once you have this freemium PLG motion, even if people aren't buying online, even if you're just getting them to sales, it's so much more efficient. And we also see product-led companies have much higher retention. Product-led companies, are often invest in onboarding and adoption, using product data to help focus CSM efforts. And you just see much, much higher retention from these retention rates of customers from product-led companies too. And also less tools. I think like a lot of non-product-led companies, they do rely on a lot of different software tools. And I think there's a lot of companies who are looking at their software stack and saying like, boy, we have a lot of tools. This has really expanded during the pandemic. What can we do with our product? Or like, how can a team like CS or marketing use our product instead of some of these other different tools that we have? So that is what I think, that's a lot of like product led, like leaning on your product to make you more efficient. These are some of the how. So I will hand it back over to you, because now we're going to switch into like, okay, what are these? Tell me, we're going to talk more about like, what do product-led companies actually do differently? So I'll hand it back over to you guys.
Perfect. Yes. So what do they do differently? Like, hopefully that background was like helpful and kind of giving you the grounding for some more like tactical stuff now. So we called out like 6 key things. This isn't, I know we've got 6, that's quite a lot, but it's not a comprehensive list, but hopefully it'll give you some inspiration for like where you can get started and where you can help the business become more efficient, and also giving customers a better experience as well. So we've said this like all the way through so far, but just to like hit that point home, the entire company is aligning around the product. And these are just a few examples across 4 key teams where you can use the product to do tasks that were probably human-led before, or a lot more painful to do before. So I think the thing when I think about it, Marcus, it always comes back to me is it's that efficiency piece. So our customer success teams, for example, will use our product. They've got all this onboarding built into our product so that they're not having that same discussion on repeat. And as a CSM, you'd rather be having a more strategic conversation, adding value to your customer and looking at their account more holistically, rather than doing the basic onboarding for the 50th user at the same organization. It just doesn't scale. It's boring if you're a CSM doing that on repeat. Not a great experience for the customer because they're not able to self-serve, learn at their own pace and get to value quickly. So it makes sense that that's where the product can really step in and automate a lot of those tasks that you would be doing on repeat. And that's just one example. I'm going to pick a few more out to give you some more ideas. Marketing. Oh my gosh, Marcus, we use kind of product-led techniques for marketing all the time, right? For example, just little things like we had a conference last week. So one of the ways that we told people about the conference and got them to come along was using in-app messaging. So when people were using our product, we'd be like, hey, we've got this conference, do you want to come? And it's a really nice experience for the customer because they can ignore it if they want, they can come back to it later. There's all sorts of different things you can do there. And then on the sales side as well, again, thinking about like trial conversions, lead generation, cross-sell and upsell, these are all things that you can get your product to do for you, which leaves the sales team, again, to like focus on more high value things. It can be quite hard to get started because, like I said earlier, because of the breadth of what product-led means. But I think the product team can take the lead a little bit on this, Marcus. You tell me if I'm wrong afterwards. But like one thing we've done is like we've talked to the different teams and departments, explained what we can and can't do in the product, and then we've kind of found projects that we can work on together. So, for example, we have a product called Pendo Feedback, and we were struggling with our in-app onboarding for some technical reasons. So we decided to invest in building like a help center in the product, which is something we actually didn't have before. But that came about because the product folks were having a conversation with the CS team and realized it was a pain point. And we're like, hey, we can actually fix this like in product. Where do you see the change happening, Marcus, like with customers and people you talk to? Is it driven by the product team or is it higher up? What do you say?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great I mean, I think it's best when it's driven by the product team, and like it's awesome. I mean, ideally, like you've got a CEO and leadership who really believes in this can help bring it to it. But yes, like having like helping your partner teams as a PM or product leader, being able to help your partner teams achieve their goals and get cross-functional wins by saying like, I think we could use the product to do this. Like that's when it works the best too, because like, product teams hold the keys to the product, right? And so I think it's important to for them to lead it, but also like it'll change the thinking of all your different teams too, right? Because like as whether you're sales or support or marketing or customer success, if you start thinking like, I've got this problem, I could solve it by hiring more people or running this ad. Like if you're a marketer, right? Like usually I've got this problem, I could solve it with like a email campaign or an ad campaign or hiring more people. And if you start thinking like, what if I could use the product to help solve this problem? You really start to like, you think differently. And like most teams outside of product don't think that they could use the product to like solve some of their challenges. So I think that's like, and if you as a product leader can help bring that thinking to your other teams, it can go a long way. The other point you made, which is a really good one, is that like, there's so much work that's just repetitive and boring and like, it doesn't need to be done by humans, right? And like, it's not fun when that's your job. And like, support is a good one that I go to a lot, but there are examples of this are all over the place. But yeah, if you work in support and you're answering the same, like, how do I reset my password support ticket over and over and over again? Like, it's just a matter of time before you lose your mind, right? Like, I mean, it's the product should do stuff like that. You don't need a smart human being to handle questions like that.
Are you that person, Marcus? Are you always forgetting your password? Is it you? It's you clogging up the support channels.
100%, 100%. I am always, I'm doing stuff like that all the time. But and like what is interesting too, as a user, right? Like, I don't want to have to talk to a human about something like that, right? Like, I don't want to certainly don't want to get on on my phone and talk to a human about it. I don't even want to like chat with someone or send an email. I just like, it would be great if the product could just tell me how to do it. And I think everybody's had that experience, like where you go into a product and you have a problem and the product sort of tells you what you're doing wrong, or you just find, an answer quickly in the product. And that's meeting user expectations too.
Yeah, and I'm not a psychologist, by the way, but it's a control thing, right? If I'm not qualified or anything like that. But I think for users, it's just a human nature thing. Like, if you can control something and get what you need when you need it, or like get your question answered without relying on someone else, you're going to prefer it, right? And that's why these product-led companies are so successful, because actually all these product-led things you're doing in the product to help your teams are putting the customer in control. And they like that. It kind of works.
Totally. And like, people get that everywhere else, it's like it used to be like an expectation. It's like, okay, yeah, if I need help, I'm going to have to call someone. But like, now people are so used to like the Amazon experience, for instance, where they've been trained to expect these things. Like, no one like, the expectation is much different. Anyway, it's a great point.
We'll go on to point 2. It sounds like we're becoming more antisocial as a human race, aren't we, or something? But there we go.
Here and there, yeah. And if people, I know me and Hannah are going slow and just riffing out, but if you have questions, drop them in the chat.
Get them in.
Seriously, yeah.
Save us from ourselves, please.
Save us from ourselves, right? We'd love to hear other people talk. All right, so you alluded to this, Hannah, but one thing that I love about product-led companies, it would be very hard to work at a different company where we didn't take this approach, because as a marketer, it's like, I don't think I can ever go back now. But product-led companies, they use their product as a marketing channel. So, in past lives, and I think the status quo for most marketing teams is that like they are extremely reliant on email and especially to reach customers or users, extremely reliant on email. And like a good open rate I remember like the best open rates we ever had at my last job were like 50% open rate. And then, and that's like out of this world open rate for email, right? Like usually it's like 10% or something. And then maybe like a 10% click-through rate. And you just see these really low response rates to email. Ads are even lower if you're trying to reach users and get them to convert. And what product-led companies do is they use their products as a marketing channel, reach people inside the app while they're using the app to present them with marketing asks. So, that can be, from a revenue standpoint, that could be saying like, hey, you are a customer of this product. We introduced an add-on that we know is perfect for just people like you who are admins and power users of this tool. We think you should check it out. Extremely high open rates and click-through rates, and it's very easy, and it's very like relevant for users too, because like if you target those in-app messages really well and use the data that you have to like deliver the right message to the right person, it's usually extremely helpful. It doesn't feel like an ad, it doesn't feel like a pop-up. It feels like something helpful where you learn something about something new. And you could use it to upsell a customer, cross-sell a customer. You could use it to, you can use it so it's even less aggressive. Like, in Pendo Free, we have our free product, and there's lots of cool features in the free product that are gated. And if you want to use one of those, you click on those, you get a little tooltip. It tells you about the product. There's actually a little video, I think, for some of them that, tells you even more. And then you can talk to someone about it if you want to try it out. So being able to do that, I think, is extremely valuable for marketers. And then like you can also do things like this example that we have here is being able to target, what we'll do in Pendo is that we'll look to see it. We'll look at people's NPS scores. We'll say like, okay, we know this person is a promoter. They're a fan of Pendo, and we know they're a user of a certain product. And so when that person is like using that product, we know their promoter will say like, super short message. Can we, use you as a reference, or can we use you as a referral? And then we'll ask that person to go to G2 Crowd and fill out a review, or serve as a customer testimonial. So there are a ton of different ways marketers can use their product. We use it for launches and sunsets, adoption, focus a lot on driving adoption inside the product. That's a marketing effort. Use it to promote events, capture customer stories. Lot of different ways you can use your product as a marketing channel. So that is number 2. Anything to add to that, Hannah? I know you, yeah, okay, nailed it.
Nailed it. Cool. Number 3, product-led companies have in-app onboarding. And by that, we mean a range of things like videos, tooltips, or full screen guides. It's any way where you're putting messages in your product that gets customers to value quickly. And I'm going to give a couple of real examples because that always helps. So on the left-hand side, you'll see this screen for roadmaps. That is part of one of our products that we totally rebuilt and relaunched in the summer. So what we did when we relaunched is, imagine going into the product, this whole section's changed. As a user, it can be a bit, oh, what's happened? So we used our in-app onboarding and created a really little cute, like 3-minute video. We linked out to some help documentation for people who want to get really detailed. And you can also like just dismiss this guide. Like there's lots of different types of people. Some want to watch videos, some want to read detailed help documentation. Some just want all of that to go away and you can play around in the product yourself. But the point is that guide is there to give people help and to get them to value fast without needing to wait for a human to explain to them why everything in roadmaps changed and, oh my gosh, what the heck do I do now? And it all comes back to that customer experience piece. If you change something in your app and you've got nice messages that guide people and explain, they're much sooner going to adopt it, to use it, and to get value from it than if you just launch something and it's just nothing. So all the best product-led companies do this. Yeah, Marcus, go.
Sorry, I'm just excited now. There's a lot of companies who, they know this is important, right? Like they know how important it is to get users on their app and successful quickly. And so they throw humans at it, a lot of people, and say like, all right, let me set up this meeting with you and we're going to walk you through this and we're going to hold your hand as you go into this. And like people, it's like the same thing as support. People prefer to be able to go into the app on their time, learn it themselves, and have the product sort of guide them through it. It's a better experience for them, and you're not like, you're not wasting all of this really valuable human time. You can build this once and it can work for thousands and thousands of people.
Definitely. I've done like a nice little mobile example on the right hand side as well, because in onboarding it shouldn't feel like intrusive and horrible. It can look beautiful and it's there to help. So there's lots of different things you can do there. It also really helps as a product person to think through the onboarding as you're building a feature. So very early on, we'll start thinking about how do we get a customer to value quickly and what do they need to know to like get started in the most like hands-off way possible. So yeah. And the other thing I'd say about this, which I love doing, is that you don't get it right first time. Do you? I don't, Marcus. Do you? I don't.
I get it right the first time every time. So that's it's
you're a better person than me, especially COVID.
No, of course not. No one does. You're right. It's iterative.
So the nice thing here is a thing that I find product-led companies do is that they learn, and I see that a lot in onboarding. So we don't get the onboarding right every time. We'll start with especially for a bigger feature, we might do a whole walkthrough, but then we can see how that's performing. Do people get bored and get rid of the onboarding? Do they prefer video? Very much depends on your product and your audience as to what's going to work for you. But this is a great way to experiment.
You were much more of the product person and the expert here, Hannah, but I feel like a lot of our customers, like they end up doing, like they start with this, like a heavy onboarding. and it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And some of the best onboarding is like super simple and like really light, right? Do you see that? Am I making that up?
I do see that, but you do get the outliers. Like
Mm.
I have seen customers whose best performing onboarding goes against all of our guidelines, and who knows, it just must be their customer and their product. But generally concise is where it's at. But it's a great way to experiment and learn about your users. Like you can take the learnings of how users like to consume information about feature releases and use them in marketing, for example. So if you see people really gravitate towards video, then that's a nice learning that you can take to other areas as well. And then just as a little kind of like a small like customer story, this is taken from one of our customers, but they actually ran, talking about testing and learning, they actually ran a test where they had a bunch of new users go through onboarding in app versus like human led, or just leaving them to it and letting them reach out to human, and like the difference was insane. Like the little picture at the back, there's an NPS score of 42, which is like how people feel about the company, about the product, and a 7% response rate once people have been through like the in-app onboarding process. And then when they looked at users who hadn't been through any of that in-app onboarding process, the NPS scores, their satisfaction scores, a lot lower, and they also had a lot lower response rate as well. So this is just one little data point from one customer, but this is an example of how you can learn and measure onboarding and see the impact.
What do people do when is there like, if there's not good onboarding? I mean, the alternative is they just kind of toss people into the app, right? Is that that's got to be the non-best practice, I suppose, right? Or a lot of.
Yeah. And I think that's when you start to see that the efficiency go down, right? It starts to clog up support with people like, hey, you rebuilt and released this thing and I don't know how to use it. That's when people naturally will just gravitate towards support team, I think.
Yeah. A lot of these things are tied together too. Like great onboarding leads to better adoption, lower support issues, like totally.
Cool. So along that vein, I'll let you talk about this one.
This one is me. Okay. Awesome. So number 4, we've spoken about this a little bit, but I think it's a really important one. Product-led companies, they help users help themselves. They let users help themselves. This is exactly what we were talking about earlier. People today, they just like, they don't want to necessarily talk to someone. Sometimes, right? Like it can be dependent on the issue. If it's a big issue and like you actually need the strategic help of a human being, then like you still want to be able to talk to someone. But these are for these things that are like reoccurring, or something that you don't necessarily need the brains of a human to help figure out. And a lot of what we see is that the popularity of in-app, you can get in front of some of these things with onboarding, or like there's another example I'll share, which we introduced this new product, which was resource center metrics. And it's this thing where we kind of have to shift people's behavior a little bit. It's very simple, but we now have this new metric way of like seeing metrics about your guides. And what we did to introduce it was like, as you are on the guides page, there's a little notification on this new metrics tab, and it's just a few words. It says we now have resource center metrics. And if you click on it, there's a 2-sentence tooltip that says what resource center metrics is. And so you can go through that process in about 10 seconds, and you see the thing, you click on it, you read the 2 sentences, and now you know what resource center metrics is. And the next time you come back to the guides page, it's not just this mysterious tab that you have to click on and think about or whatever, it's resource center metrics. And like in 10 seconds, we educated people on like what this thing is. I think that is in-app support and like help, right? Like there's different ways to think about this stuff. Every example I have here is of a resource center or a help center, or onboarding checklist, which is I think what we kind of default to when we think about in-app support. But you can also kind of get out in front of issues like that, like if it's hard to reset your password, or if there's a report that's hard to use, or if you see a lot of support tickets for this certain thing, like little tool tips or little helpful in-app guides that can help people out in like less than 10 seconds can really help you get in front of those. And then what this is an example of is a lot of product-led companies, they have a ever-present resource inside their app, a help center, and in there you can put a ton of stuff, and you can target these at users too to make sure that it's the right stuff. But having your knowledge base attached here, having a way for people to submit a ticket if they need to, having a way for people to look for product updates or FAQs or webinars, whatever the things are that people are constantly reaching out to support for, reaching out to CSMs for, that they don't need to, all of that can live inside of your app. And you can even do it with like common use cases. So, it's like, all right, we know that there's really 3 big jobs to be done that all of our users have. You can put those in a resource center and people can find them and click on them and educate themselves. So having this in-app resource, using the product to help people help themselves is something that we see product-led companies do really, really effectively. Anything to add to that one, Hannah?
It's perfect. Same 2 things again, isn't it? Basically, like, lets you be more efficient and gives customers better experience. You're winning.
Yeah, it's win.
It's win-win. Win-win.
It is. It's win-win. It requires change and work up front, but for sure, this is and maintenance. But like, it is win-win. It's good for the customers. It's good for your business.
Cool. And along a similar vein, we see product-led companies collecting feedback in that same way as well. In fact, I'm just going to jump slides. So I've got a little screenshot similar to what you were showing, Marcus. So on the left-hand side, you can see like we've got this little widget with all the things Marcus was explaining, like technical support, help articles, and you can also like share your feedback. There's that share your feedback link at the bottom. And again, this comes down to efficiency, because as product managers, one of the biggest pains we have when trying to work out what to build next and satisfy our customers is like getting all of their feedback in one place and then actually acting on it and communicating back. So we see product-led companies are making smarter product decisions by getting customers to submit all of their feedback into one place. So the product team can actually have confidence it's a good data set, and so they can actually use it. And then again, they're using the mechanisms in products, whether it's those in-app guides we've been showing, or whether it's that little pop-up with product updates. But product-led companies are then communicating back to customers as well. And this is great for 2 reasons. One is, as a product person, I know I'm getting really valuable data, like directly from my customer base who are in my product using it every day. And I can then take it back to the business, combine it with various other things, but then make very like smart product decisions. And then secondly, again, customers can just submit feedback at the time they need to, at the time they're using your product, and then they feel heard because you're communicating back. And this is a real key part of the customer experience. And it's becoming more important, honestly. So they collect feedback in-app and then communicate updates back clearly as well.
And will this give you more voice of the customer, more product feedback? I mean, and how does that help you, right? I think that's at least one thing that I see, is that like a lot of times if people aren't, like people don't, maybe they think they're getting good product feedback or hearing the voice of the customer, but in reality, they're not getting enough. Is that true?
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, again, it depends a bit on the business, but generally feedback tends to be scattered. It'll be like a CSM will have a spreadsheet over here and sales will be pecking at you over there, and it can be very overwhelming. So I think even if product managers are soliciting feedback from customers, they find it hard to trust because it tends to be like bits and pieces and not all like consolidated. So yeah, if you have that channel like in your product, as a product person, it gives you a lot of confidence that all the data is flowing into like one place. So you're much more likely to like look at it, to respond to it, and like to communicate back when you feel like you've got the full picture. And that's why it can be so powerful, like having that link in the product, so it's all flowing into one, kind of one spot. And it's not necessarily that they're getting more feedback, but it tends to be higher quality as well when the feedback's coming direct from customers and they're submitting it at the time that they've got an issue as well. I think a lot of it gets lost if you have to, go and find who the product manager is and you're just a user and you're like, I don't know these people, and do I write them an email? Do I put something on social media? It's a lot of feedback customers will keep to themselves if they don't see like a clear like way to submit it, I guess.
Yeah. And it seems like it would help you with internal conversations too, right? Like I know as a PM, you're always pulled in a million directions, and like your VP of sales or whoever could be like, hey, we really need this feature, right? And like you got to go and maybe that's not solving for the greater good of the product, right? And you got to go and have that conversation. And like this can
Yes.
help you in those instances.
Oh my gosh, so much. Like if a salesperson's like asking for something and you can see that nobody else wants that thing. In fact, that thing is
that
really
never happens.
bizarre.
Does that ever happen?
Of course it does. No, it's in fact that thing they're asking is like it's totally bizarre. It just like makes it a nicer conversation if you can be like, hey, I've heard you. I've put it in my feedback repository. However, no one else is asking for that yet, but we'll keep an eye on it. And then if you are communicating back in like, hey, these are the things that are important. This is what we're hearing from customers and sales, and this is what aligns with the business. It then gives that salesperson something to go back with. And that's really satisfying as a product person, right? If you're like, hey, no, we're not building that, but we're working on these things, and this is why, you are giving them something to go and, to go away and have that conversation. And more often than not, that one bizarre request quickly goes away. And if it doesn't, that's great. Sometimes you get a bizarre request and 6 months later you're building the thing because it suddenly becomes important for everyone. But the point is the foundation is data, which we've somehow linked so nicely.
Yes. Cool. All right. Your video is frozen for me, Hannah, but I can still hear you. So hopefully it's not on my end. People can still hear me. Can people still hear me? We'll see.
Yes, we hear you.
All right, good. Okay, but it looks like Hannah's frozen for people, and I'm still here. Okay, well, we're at 0.6. Thank you, Matilda. Let me share my screen. Hannah's Wi-Fi must have cut out. Sorry about that, friends. So the last point here is that product-led companies, they make decisions with data rather than gut feel. This is the bonus point, or maybe one of the other ones is a bonus point. But there's a lot of I think a lot of I don't know, old school product management, or there's a lot of product teams that just make a lot of decisions kind of shooting from the hip. When they decide to deploy a guide, how they make product decisions, like what does the roadmap say? A lot of that can be based on like the loudest voice in the room, or what worked for people in the past, or maybe there's just like one really important customer who dictates a lot of the roadmap. And like that's not always the wrong thing to do. And that can work at a smaller company potentially too, but sooner or later, like that usually like isn't a good way to build products. Just operating off of gut feel too much can really get you in trouble, I think, especially when you start to grow. And what we see from product-led companies is they're just much more strategic. How they decide to deploy a guide like is going to be based on data. They're only going to do it when it's helpful. They're making product decisions based on a lot of data, qualitative and quantitative, but usually, hopefully, important, valuable insights from users and user behavior. And then the roadmap is designed, on a lot of like the right feedback. I don't know if mass feedback is always the right way, but it's like feedback that's been collected and cleaned and analyzed and prioritized, kind of like what Hannah was talking about, where it's not just necessarily the bizarre request of one person, but lots of data points that the product team has analyzed and figured out like the right path forward. So I see that a lot. I really empathize with product teams because they always have a ton of internal pressure from lots of different teams to build certain stuff. So like having that data, I think, is really important. So where to start your journey? We are at the end here, so maybe Hannah will jump back in or not. Oh, there she is.
I'm back.
It's like I summoned you. Your Wi-Fi is back. Okay.
That was a test, Marcus. How did he do while I was gone?
Hey, that's a good question. I had the next slide, so I basically wasn't.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry, everyone. It just crashed. I was like, no, for interrupting. Let's do the last section. I'll try to stay here.
All right. Okay, you're back. So where to start your journey? This brings us home. I think you are the first bullet point here, Hannah. So you Is that right? You want to start this one?
Yeah. Do you like, I've been watching that new Lord of the Rings thing, and when I saw Journey, it made me think of hobbits. So
this is me and you from the last hike we went on. This isn't a Lord of the Rings gift. This is actually
oh, sorry. You're more Gandalf and I'm more Frodo. We established that. But,
I'm more, I would say Samwise. So okay, we gotta stop.
Okay, we'll sort this afterwards. We'll sort this after. So where to start your journey? I would, being in product manager shoes, if you're product managers, come from the view of like, how can we build a better product experience? Like have a look around the business, go and talk to your chums in the different departments and figure out what you can do to have like the biggest impact from day one. It could be opening up a feedback channel in your product. It might be offering a free trial. It could be building better in-app onboarding to get new users started with your product. There's no right or wrong way to start with being product-led. So ask yourself how you can build a better product experience and what is going to have the biggest impact for your company and your customers. Everybody starts in different places.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. The second bullet point here is like, I think a lot of the value of products led comes from using the product to help get more out of the people on your team, or looking at stuff that's like really inefficient or just really a waste of time and trying to replace it with the product team. So like every company has these, even the companies that do product led really well, support, like we've talked about, is, often a culprit where it's like there are humans solving for support issues. The product could. Onboarding is often a culprit, like we talked about, not in the same way, but marketing, like an over reliance on email, even in product, right? Like, you're using humans to do a lot of discovery and research and interviews. You still want to do that stuff, but like using the product to get that data too. So I think is the next step, like asking that question, like what could our products do to support humans or instead of humans, is a great way to start to think about this stuff.
And then finally, I don't think we've talked about this too much, but one thing that we do that works really nicely is that when we take on a project that's very product led, we all align around what the product metrics are going to be for that. So just as an example, again, that roadmap launch I talked about, that product that we launched in the summer, one way that we kind of drove that launch in a product-led way was to think about what metrics we wanted to drive. And for us, we had some key adoption targets. So we were tracking the adoption of the new feature, and then we were like, okay, what onboarding can we put in app to help drive the customers to do a certain thing and make sure they're getting value quickly. Or we looked at, okay, adoption's dropping off a bit. Do we need a bit more customer education? Should we invite people to a webinar in app? Do we need to link to some help documentation? By aligning around a product metric, it really helped us think about what product-led tactics we could use, and it drove everybody to kind of the same goal. We're all working towards the same thing, and that was a big win. So definitely think about that as you're starting to implement some of these tactics. Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
What have we missed, Marcus? I felt that was quite a comprehensive little journey around being product led.
I think so.
It was quite good.
Yeah.
We did quite
Me too,
well.
Hannah. Me too. Yes, there's a lot there. There's a lot to think about, but it is. I think if you're trying to think broader about how product led can help your business, not just about product led growth, it's definitely covered a lot of ground today. But any questions from folks? If you do, feel free to unmute, and I'm just going to stop sharing so we can all look at this view. But if people have questions, you can put it in the chat, or you can unmute and ask us. Maybe it's things you're struggling with at your company and or trying to do. I mean, I know this stuff is hard. It's easy to kind of come in and say hey, here's how it could work. But it's always interesting to hear what people are dealing with and seeing if our experience can help you at all.
It's okay if not as well. Marcus, where should people go if they want to learn more about being product led. I know we've got Pendo specific resources that you can just find on pendo.io. Is there any, I've literally Googled it and that was helpful, but do you have any like go-to like podcasts, or I don't know, where could people learn a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, there's some good, I know, I'm trying to think of the product led hub on Pendo's website. That's good. But yeah, I mean, I always think of, but like in our resources section, there's a lot of good resources from Pendo that can help. We just put out this like inefficiency report, which I think is really interesting, and it highlights like the 10 most, like we surveyed a few hundred customers and looked at, like, they told us like what are the most inefficient parts of their business, and like that was really interesting. And that's like not exactly like becoming product led, but it just highlights these things where it's like businesses are inefficiency and how being product led can solve for them. So I love that one. So yeah, there's a few there. All right, I think some folks need to leave. I also think Hannah's frozen again, so her Wi-Fi cut out shortly. But thank you all. I appreciate the time. Hopefully you learned something. If you are interested to connect, we can always connect on LinkedIn. I think me and Hannah are up for that, so find us and connect. But that's all we got. Have a wonderful day.